Welcome everyone to the Mastercam 2026 Rollout Webinar brought to you by MLC CAD Systems. We're excited to have you join us as we explore the latest release of Mastercam, designed to elevate your machining experience with a more intuitive and powerful interface. This release focuses on increasing productivity, enhancing precision, and giving you greater control over complex machining. Now, let's dive into our agenda. Sherman Snyder from our Houston office will start us off with system enhancements, followed by Brian Gleason from our Phoenix office covering lathe and mill turn enhancements. Finally, Dennis Ungarandu, also from our Houston office, will present the latest milling enhancements. We'll wrap up with a look at Co-Pilot, Mastercam's brand new AI-powered programming assistant. Let's get started. Sherman, the floor is yours.
Today, let's look at the exciting new Levels Manager in Mastercam 2026. This is redesigned to help you organize and control your levels more efficiently. The Levels Manager now features a tree-structured interface, letting you create and nest groups and subgroups so that your levels are neatly organized. You can easily drag and drop to rearrange the levels and even move entities directly within the tree. And with this new search filter tool, finding a specific level in a large complex job is faster than ever. Let's take a look at this new search function first. If I was to search fixture or fixturing, we could then see our fixturing levels 50 and 51, and we can make selections. With our containment Op10 and Op20, I'm going to show you how to create groups. I'm going to right click after these are selected and group these together. We can also rename this group. I'll just call it contain. Within these groups, we can also create subgroups. We'll just label this one subgroup. There are also some enhancements to the visibility and control. Visibility is now easier to manage. You can use the eye icons to toggle the entire levels on or off with just a simple click. Each level also shows the entity counts, giving you quick insight at a glance. When you select a level or an entity, what you're going to see is the eye, as we see here, shows the partial because one of my levels is selected within the group. What we also see is with the 24 count containment Op10, if we expand this, we can see the entity counts for line and surfaces, as well as Op20 whenever I select for the 4 count entities. Let's turn on containment Op10. Notice how when I click on my surfaces or lines, it automatically selects these in my graphics view. We also have a context menu and levels actions added in the More function. This is going to be your standard right-click menu. The updated More action menu gives you level-specific options such as rename, reset, delete, manage, etc. There are also some enhancements to help you save time. We now have group filtering. As we see here, inside of the group filtering, we can focus on certain parts of this tree that we need. Right now we have it set for level number. If I was to toggle this on, this button will actually put it in the level number order that we need. If I was to choose, let's say, entity count, we can now see the entity count starting from 1 entity down to 105. I'm going to go back up to the filter option. I'm going to set this back for my level number. Mastercam also offers a filter function. Right now we have all filters selected on. If I was to deselect these and select my contain group that we created earlier and say OK, in my Levels Manager, I can now see just my containments that we have. We can see the entity count 24, 20 lines, and surfaces that are associated to the actual level 10 labeled containment boundary. If I was to select my lines, notice how they highlighted my graphics view. But there are nothing selected here, so this is just a quick view of what we're actually clicking on in our screen. If I wanted to select, I can select my surfaces, say select, and now when we look at the select entity count, we now see 2 entity counts here. So why does all this matter? What are the benefits that we get? One, we get cleaner management. Groups, nest, reorder, we can do all this with ease. We also have faster access to searching, highlighting, and isolate geometry quickly. With improved controls, we can also show and hide and toggle entity counts at a glance, as we see here. The smart workflow will help you navigate complex setups without visual clutter. With these powerful new changes, the Levels Manager in Mastercam 2026 helps you work smarter, stay organized, and keep your focus on where it matters, on your design. The first thing you might notice in Mastercam 2026 is the way the planes are laid out. These folders you see are called groups. You can group planes together to better organize your programming design. We're going to go down to rib 1, and we'll select all the way to rib bottom. By right-clicking, we can create a group of the ribs, and we'll go ahead and change the name here and call this rib features. Now the group is renamed. Let's do the same thing for the planes associated with the cooling fins. This time, we'll use the keyword search feature. As you can see, there's multiple planes on here, but we can go back to our planes manager and select our fins, and we'll group these together as well. Let's give it a name, and we'll rename this one to fin. The plane's property panel is available at the bottom and can be expanded and minimized as needed. You can also customize this in your properties that are displayed. Let's take a look at some of the settings here. We can filter or organize here by multiple options. In this case, we'll select name. What we can also do is use the corner filter function, and we can select groups by names. In this case, we'll select fin. Let's say OK. Within the selection, we also see our G view. Let's go ahead and unselect everything here. And we can set our WCS, C, and T here as well. I'll put it in an isometric view. We can display our planes. Another cool function is that we can actually split with our section views here inside of the Planes Manager. We also have more options that you would typically see under your right-click menu. With these enhancements, organizing and managing planes in Mastercam 2026 is just faster, cleaner, and much more intuitive. We'll take a look at the enhancements for the Solids Manager inside of Mastercam 2026. We have these 4 cushion solids inside of our Solids Manager. I'm going to go up to the top, and here we have our auto highlight function. If I was to expand one of these and select the body, you can see how it auto highlights the solid model on the screen. We're going to take a look at how we can group these solid models here. I'm going to start by adding a group. We'll give it a name of cushion. And as you can see with my group, I can actually drag and drop my solids into the group. Go ahead and place all 4 in here. Another thing I could do is create a subgroup, just like we can for our Levels Manager. I'll call this one left cushion. We could take our left cushions and place them inside of the subgroup labeled left cushion. Let's take a look at the changes inside of the machine group setup for Mastercam 2026. Right now you can see that we have the option to select machine, master model, stock, etc., all from the drop-down window, where previously we only had files, tool settings, and stock setup. When I open the machine area, you might notice a minor change to our post location. The directory is now a lot smaller, making it easier to read without pulling the window over to the right. We can now easily see what post we have linked to our machine. Let's also take a look at the work holding section. We'll go ahead and turn on our fixtures here. And let's add a fixture, we'll say 100. Whenever we have components added to the fixture area, we can now group them just like we do in a Levels Manager. We'll say that this is Op1 fixture here. Let's add some more components to this library. We'll grab both Op2 and green check. And you know what, let's group these together as well. So we'll create a group. And with the group being created, we'll go ahead and label this Op2 items. Another thing we could do is create a group. And we can also add selections from our graphics window to the right. So we'll clear that selection. And let's add these cushions. We'll green check in that selection. And inside of the fixture area, you can also drag and drop components into a single group too. Notice how I can turn them off and on just by clicking on the group instead of selecting each one separately. Mastercam 2026 introduces a significant update. The Tool Manager is now integrated directly into the function panel on the left-hand side, consistent with other panels. This means no more popping open separate windows or hunting through menus. The Tool Manager is always at your fingertips. Let's begin by looking at an existing deburr toolpath already on our part. We'll go ahead and backplot here just to see how it behaves. Here you'll notice several retracts in the toolpath, which can occur by avoiding gouges on the part. The retracts are a result of the tool's limited reach. With the updated Tool Manager, it is easy to define a more appropriate tool to eliminate these unnecessary retracts. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll start by opening the tool. And looking at this tool assembly, let's go ahead and make some edits to this particular tool from a file that we've downloaded from the internet. I have this file on level 6. Once we green check, Mastercam is going to let us know that we're about to change the profile data. By looking at the information for the model that was imported, I can see that the cutting diameter is the same, and we'll leave the overall length the same as well, but I have to adjust the cutting length. By selecting the points on the start and the backside, we can populate these values. Let's do the same for our shank diameter and shoulder diameter. On the shoulder diameter, we'll select the diameter, and you can see that the shoulder shrinks in. Actually, the shank looks good, so let's go ahead and adjust this to have the taper we need. And we actually need to adjust the shoulder length. So select the origin, the bottom of that shank there, and we'll green check. Now looking at the holder, we're actually holding on to nothing, so let's hold on to a 1/2 inch here. We'll give it a 3.5. We'll green check, and let's start by regenerating our toolpath. One of the greatest enhancements here is how easily you can bring in this 3D model and make changes. This new model-driven definition makes it faster and more accurate to build the tool's definition itself. Once we backplot, we can see that we no longer have the retracts that we had before. Here, you see the uninterrupted motion. There's no more excessive retracts, thanks to the longer tool reach that we just defined within the new Tool Manager. So why is this important? This gives us a faster workflow. The new dockable Tool Manager keeps everything in one place. No more switching between windows to save time. We get more accurate tools. We can import real time on these 3D geometry. This is also simpler and more intuitive.
Sherman, thank you for that fantastic presentation on system enhancements. It was really cool to see the new interface for 2026. Now, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Brian Gleason for the next segment. Brian, let's get started.
What's up? I'm Brian Gleason with MLC CAD Systems. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the enhancements in Lathe and Millturn. So our first kind of goals to look at some of the improved tool importations, being able to save some of our favorite settings, other toolpaths available inside of the MT environment, and some enhancements to PrimeTurning. So to start it off, I'm going to bring in some tooling. So we'll go to our Lathe Tool Manager, and we have a new option inside of here for the import tool data from, and we can bring in a generic tool catalog or a GTC file. I already have one set up, so I'm going to go ahead and select it. We'll select the select all checkbox. Now we need to validate these tools, make sure everything looks good. Give that a sec while it processes those, tessellates all the shapes and pulls in the solids. Once we have it done validating, we'll go ahead and we can save it to a library, or I'm just going to save it to this part file. Now we see we have our tools brought in, and I'm going to start off with our Tmax. Make sure all the settings are good. It is going to be tool 1. We'll edit the insert, and it will be left-handed general turning. I'm going to make it offset 1. I'm going to skip down. How is it mounted in the machine? It is going to be horizontally because it's a tool spindle style machine, and this is how it loads. We'll go ahead, reverse that around. Go to our settings, and we'll just set it off the tip. We'll get all these set up. Now, I like to make sure that we have all of our tool clearances set. So what do we got on this first one? We'll set our angle. And then we'll set the clearance. So there's one. We have that set, and I'm not going to worry about speeds and feeds on this. Next, we'll look at our first prime turning. The holder, let's see, that was set. We're going to set that as tool 2. We'll go modify our insert. And I'm going to make this a right-hand tool. And make it offset 2. It's going to be horizontal, counterclockwise. And we'll reverse that. Now I'll get my insert shape set. Go ahead and set our angles. And in clearance. Now, I know I see a lot of people don't do this, but I want to give Mastercam as much information as possible to know where all these are going to be set to, and that way when it does retracts and clearances, it knows everything about that tool. Now we got one more tool to take care of, and we're going to tool 1's fine. It doesn't look like my holder is located correctly, so we're going to edit that. So now we have our in clearance set, or sorry, machine side connection set. We'll go update the tool. That is going to be a right-hand tool. I'll make that 31 or offset 1 is going to be in the bottom turret, counterclockwise, and then we'll go quadrant 4. Get all of our angles set. Now we'll get these clearance angles. End angle. And voila. Now we had all of our tools added, straightened up, and that was probably a little bit quicker and easier than setting up a bunch of 3D tools, right? Awesome. Now we're ready to make some toolpaths. So I'm just going to do a quick face and then some roughing. So we'll face off. We'll use our Tmax and set our tool angle 45. Don't judge my spelling. We'll just take this straight to size. There's only 50 thou stock on the front. All right. Now I'm just going to do a kind of a coarse rough. We'll go ahead and look at doing the outside. I'm going to leave this other end for later. So we'll use the same tool. Now, we could set our depth of cut and minimum cut depth, stock to leave. We could always put our favorite numbers in here, our lead in, lead outs. Maybe I want to extend, no, 10 thousandths, whatever you guys like to do. Now, in the past, we've always had to do this from start over and over, but now we have the ability to save these. So if you want to get these set, you can go up and say save, and it's going to ask you where you want to save them to. So we have that finally in the lathe portion. Now, there's another option as well. I can hit a drop-down list, and I saved an iteration I want to use for roughing for this certain tool. We can have as many different copies as you want. You have the option to save a custom parameter. So I'll do my T-max roughing, which will have my depth of cut, how much stock I want to leave, and if I look at my lead in, lead out, it went with how much lead out I like to have. Sorry, my extension on the lead out, how much I like to have. So a lot of settings get saved. We'll triple check my tool angle. Make sure that we have our plane set. And give it a comment because I want to know what I'm doing. So now we got it all roughed out. So next, we're going to look at some of the PrimeTurning enhancements. So I'm going to reuse my last toolpath and then I'll reverse it. We have our PrimeTurning tool. We'll set the tool angle. I'll set this one to about 45. Maybe not about, maybe exactly 45. And we'll say tool spindle prime turning. So we got that set on. Now we'll go to some of the rough parameters and I'll set these to some of my favorites. We'll clean up corners, do slight overlap. And pretty good set here. So a new function that if you guys are familiar with PrimeTurning is you're going to notice that we have angle. Now, this part is going to be best at a 0-degree angle, but say we had something conical shaped, I could redo the U-roughing to be at a separate angle. We can do -40, we can do 40, whatever would match the part shape better. We now have that option to do our PrimeTurning rough at that angle. So I'll leave that alone. Another enhancement inside of the PrimeTurning is on the feed rate. If you want to do a secondary feed rate, you can have it override, and now we have a distance from end cut option. So before it was only available for the axial cutting, now it is available for the secondary feed rate. So definitely some cool options inside there. I'll leave that one alone. We'll do a quick finish pass. Green check, let that think for a sec. So definitely some other cool functions in there. I like to be able to change the angle and then let that process real quick. And then once that gets done, we'll look at one more enhancement on the PrimeTurning. So just to give it a sec. Now, I'm going to go ahead and look at some of, oh, never mind, it's done. Let's look at the other enhancement. So on top of the PrimeTurning, we now have the option to do a pinch turn using Prime. So I'm going to set my axis combination correct. It'll find our tool. We'll say I'll do number of revolutions. Let's do 3 revolutions before that comes in. It's going to cut the upper turret first. And now my PrimeTurning is going to be balanced between the top and bottom. So definitely another cool option inside the Prime turning options. Now that's going to take a sec to think. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up how we came up with the GTC import. So I went and I scrolled around, tried to find my turning tools, set external turning tools, and then I started selecting them and adding them to a list. Now, of course, you need to create and log in with an account, but I found the tools that I wanted, said save to a list. And I started building up a tool library for my part. And once I got done with that, I went to my account, my saved list, and here's the tools that we brought in already from the start. Now, once I have the list, I select them all. We can download tool data. And then on that tool data, you can do basic 3D models, detailed 3D models, 2D drawings, generic catalog, basic tool data. And so I went with the GTC, generic tool catalog. And then I had Sandvik send me a link. And voila, I'll get a link with a zip file of that GTC. So we got that one all processed, ready to go. Next thing I want to talk about, which is probably going to be a fan favorite, on the milling. We now have every milling toolpath available. Previously, we weren't able to use some of the legacy toolpaths, but everything's, if you even want to do 2D and then swept or loft, you can bring those in. I'm going to stick with everybody's favorite 3D toolpath, Flowline, the gateway drug to surfacing. And then we'll check our flow cut direction. Looks good. So even though this is a legacy toolpath, they added this setup page inside of here. So we can say we'll do a planar rotation aligned with spindle. This page is going to look the same as what we're used to in mill. And this page is going to look the same as well. I'm going to just decrease that step over a little bit so we get some fun looking toolpath. And voila. Now, we'll be quick and easy about this one. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of it all the way around. So now we have all the sides done. And that is some of the cooler enhancements to Millturn. But I have one more thing I want to show you. So inside the tool setup manager, we have to set all these tools up. I'm going to do the quick easy button and just load. And we're going to look at our lower turret real quick. And we can see it butted that tool all the way down. That may work, but it looks like we're buttoned up right there. Not a big fan of that one. Let's look at how we can extend it, and we're going to measure it off of this edge. So as before, we could set projection length. I'm going to rotate this around, and the default didn't really give us a very good, reference numbers. We have a new option inside of this. So if you notice, we have that little square. This is going to be for motion. This is alignment. Dynamic transform had that ability too. So I'm going to say I'm going to realign. I'm going to line up my endpoint with about the tip of the tool. We'll need to find an edge somewhere. And then I'm going to align the reference point to the end of the tool locator. I'll click on the square again. Now we're moving the part. I can say from the tool locator, I want the tip to be 2.5 inches away. So now we have a good solid reference that's a lot makes a lot more sense. And this is probably one of my favorite enhancements to the whole thing. So now if you look at that, we can see the tool sticking out a little bit further, and we have a good reference to that tool locator. So that is some of the better enhancements. We'll go ahead and see what this looks like. Check out the tool motion and see what our part does. So just want to check it out. Here we go. We have our rough lower turret's part waiting to get synchronized with the pinch. And then here's our favorite flowline toolpath. So definitely some cool options. Again, we have the new ability to change our reference points on the tool projection in the MT for the Millturn. We can save our defaults. You can save iterations of your favorite defaults. Also, all toolpaths are available for Millturn for the milling. That is another great enhancement. And then a few changes to the prime turning. So Hopefully you enjoyed this. Reach out to us if you have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for that insightful presentation on lathe and mill turn enhancements. It's great to see all the new capabilities in action. Now, we'll shift our focus over to milling enhancements with Dennis Ungaranu. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Let's take a look at Mastercam 2026 and see how they changed the reference points page and our options. So as you can see, we have the same initial toolpath, but now we have a different look on our home and reference points page. So if we set our approach and retract options, but this time we have a tool plane option. So it now follows the tool plane based on the tool plane that we select. So if we set this one to absolute tool plane and then move our options down or copy our options downwards, notice that we are on the top, front, and front planes. I'm going to click OK, and notice how our tool position, our home reference position, is set to that location. Now if I take this toolpath and copy it over, we need to change our plane over to back, back. So top, back, back. And then we also need to change our new chain direction and compensation direction to make sure we're clamp cutting and compensating on the correct side of our chain. As well, we need to make sure that our top of stock and depth locations are accurate. Okay, now when we look at our home and reference positions, everything is set to be the same. If I click OK, notice that it transferred over and followed that tool plane to the correct reference position on that plane. And if we set it to incremental instead of absolute, then it'll be incremental from the geometry location to the reference points approach and retract position. Now in 2026, we have the ability to create a tapered helix entry motion. Notice our part here where we have a pocket, and using a dynamic mill operation, we have a helix entry option on our entry motion page. And we can use a profile or plunge only or different methods, but up until now, this is what we had. Now we have the option to check this tapered helix method, and now notice how the helix radius value is turned off. This creates a maximum and minimum radius amount automatically based on the size of the tool and based on the distance that it will plunge to get to your floor depth. It'll create that tapered helix pattern. Now let's take a look at and verify how that benefits us. And really, this is kind of a revolutionary, sort of like taking helix entry or helical entry to the next level. Maybe call it Helix Entry 2.0. So as we hit the play button here, and I'm going to create a section view here so we can visualize and see how that pattern is going down, plunging into the material. Now the benefit of this, as it's plunging down and removing a little bit at a time in that tapered fashion, it is creating little small microchips. And these chips are much easier to evacuate and to get flushed out of that cavity that's being plunged down to the floor depth. And when it reaches the final depth, notice how as it opens up, it's actually engaged in a small section of the flute and slowly increasing the section of that flute height all the way until it reaches the full radius value of the top section, and then starts to open up the pocket in a normal dynamic mill pathing and operation. And the benefit of that is that now as it's opening up that initial helical plunge cavity, it's allowing chips to get flushed out quicker and easier, and allows the coolant to reach the bottom of your tool where it's really making contact with all that material, right? So really, this is a win-win. I don't see any reason why not to ever use this. I would probably just change my method now to always use helical entry unless there's a specific reason not to. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good one here. This one's an improvement to the OptiRough and the Area Roughing toolpaths. This is kind of like one of those that you wanted, but now that you have it, you will realize you needed it. So let's take a look at our part here. And if we actually go into our side view, notice how those flats are not being addressed with our toolpathing and roughing toolpaths. So essentially with this operation being ran, we would need to create a secondary operation just to address all of those flat surfaces on this part. So what we can do as an improvement in 2025, what they added last year, is the ability to create those uniform step downs, right? And that helped. Notice how we have these 4 step downs. That last one is has just a little bit left. And I turn on the uniform step down, it equalizes those step downs. And yeah, it addresses one of the flats, but not, a couple other ones here. So, we may want to use this toolpath to eliminate and save time so we don't have to create other operations. And that's how you can use that critical depth function. So let's take a look and see how we can turn that on, which is very simple. You can have it include all flats under cut parameters, and you can select all flats, or you can manually select certain flats, right? And then that's only if you need to address only certain areas. So I can select maybe the top of this flat and the top of this flat here, and those floors and top of those bosses are now going to be prioritized, and it will create a layer of toolpathing above on those features. So let's take a look at how that looks like. Once this has generated, notice how we now have toolpaths right above the top of those flats. Now, for flats, I believe I have a 0 stock allowance. So floor stock is 0, and if you set some stock allowance, then it'll cut right above that. But basically now it's addressing those flats, and I don't have to come back with any sort of extra facing or area milling type toolpaths. So really essentially saving us one or more than one toolpath operation from having to run additionally on top of this OptiRough. So great time saver and a little bit more of an efficient process here. I like it. Another one of the improvements in 2026 what is the way that they handle different voids or cavities in between holes for our drill operations. So let's take a look at 2025 and figure out kind of what the problem was. If you remember, they did a great job at improving the feature recognition and especially the hole detection on models that didn't have that build history. So quickly we were able to select the entire length of that hole, and both of them, since they're collinear, it calculates the full depth all the way through from one end to the other, which is great, because now we're able to punch all the way through the hole and give us maybe a little bit of a breakthrough here with an inserted drill. And as our stock model is solid, that would be a proper approach and a drill operation. But the problem is afterwards, when I go back and want to countersink, if I select both of these surfaces, well, that's kind of where there was a little bit of a limitation here. And if we throw this back into 5-axis, notice our hole segments only sees one hole. And if we go back to, let's say, linking parameters and put in our right parameters here for our countersink, well, it's only going to countersink from one side. So essentially, the only way for us to do this is copy and paste that toolpath, and we would have to reselect the other side, essentially creating two operations when realistically we could have done it in one. Well, that's now possible in 2026. In 2026, if we want to drill through the same way we just did in 2025, now we have to choose an option under the Advanced tab called Include Voids. So we have to select this option now in order for it to detect the void and be able to drill all the way through in one shot like we just did. Notice how it sees the whole thing. I select both of them, which essentially gives me the full length of those segments. I can select my inserted drill and go to tool axis control, make sure that we're in 5-axis, and notice how my hole segments detects that void area, and the full length between the two holes and the void is 86 millimeters, but it's only one hole. So now I can drill all the way through, break through a little bit, and if my stock model is solid, then this would be an appropriate toolpath to use. Now, afterwards, we would have to come back and countersink. In order to countersink like we wanted to in 2025, now you got to make sure that Include Voids is turned off, which by default is off. So we don't want to include that void. We want to select this hole and select this hole, which it will detect all the segments within the hole, such as a counterbore or countersink or a chamfer attached to that segment. But notice how it still sees it now as two separate holes, not as one long hole. And then that allows me to create and drill or countersink or spot drill from both ends all in one single operation. Although the void is still there and it's seeing it, it's detecting it, but it's not including it into the toolpath. So essentially, now we're able to clean up our drilling toolpaths and not have to do two separate operations just to be able to spot drill or countersink from both ends. So that's a great improvement. Now, those of you that have Blade Expert, are using Blade Expert, or are looking into getting Blade Expert, now Mastercam 2026 has introduced an enhancement to Blade Expert and blade finishing strategies. So what we can do here is run a Blade Expert toolpath operation, and we'll look at our stock to auto detect. Our cut pattern, we're going to do a blade finishing strategy. We're going to morph between shroud and hub. And this time, instead of a full contour, we now have the ability to select full trim, trailing, and leading edges. So we can define those and create a different strategy with those leading edges. And what it'll do is now enable our edges page with some extra options. Before I go there, let's go ahead and define our geometry. So I'm going to select our blades first. So the blade is this orange color, and then go ahead and select our next option, which is the fillets, and that's going to be the green color here. And that's something that you would have to set up ahead of time and kind of prep on changing the color of these faces, because you see how many little facets there are. That's going to take some time to click on every single one of those and select them. So if you do it one time ahead of time and prep that, then now all you have to do is select by color. Well, this one actually is going to be our edges. That's going to be these three surfaces. Okay, so we have our shroud, our hub, fillets, blades, all detected and selected. And then when we go to our edges page, we're going to say, how do we want to approach or handle our leading edge and trailing edge? So for our leading edge, I'll go ahead and do a full without trimming. And our trailing edge, we'll do a trim by tool radius. And maybe I'll go ahead and type in a 5.0 tangential extension. So that will allow the tool down by the trailing edge to have a tangential extension, okay, instead of rolling around those edges if we need those to be sharp, because that's a functional feature of an impeller. We'll go ahead and hit OK on that and generate our toolpath. And once we've generated the toolpath, as you can see, we now have a little bit of an extension coming off those edges. And then when we look at our trailing edge, it rolls around before it exits and enters in the new side with the new entry on the other side. So another thing that's also part of this is a feed rate control option. So around that leading and trailing edge, sometimes because it can get very thin and narrow there, and also because it's changing direction, and now the material is going to be cut on the other side of the tool as it wraps around that area, we may want to roll around and slow it down a little bit so we don't have any vibration or chatter or anything like that. So we may want to, bring this down and do like a 50% feed rate reduction. So then as we generate this toolpath and then take a look at our back plot, I'll go ahead and just kind of forward through part of this. Notice how as it's coming in, we have our feed rate set to 120. And as it's coming in, approaching around that radius there, and it's just starting to roll around, it changes to 60. And as it rolls around the blade, it will change back to 120 once it engages from the other side. Right there. So those are the improvements. It's called enhanced edge rolling for your trailing and leading edges using Blade Expert.
Thank you, Dennis, for that deep dive into the milling enhancements. It's exciting to see how these new features can boost productivity and precision. Now, let's move on to our final segment of the webinar, an exclusive look at Co-Pilot, Mastercam's new AI-powered programming assistant. Let's dive into the video and see Co-Pilot in action.
The manufacturing industry is at a pivotal moment. As an aging workforce exits the field, the demand for new talent continues to rise. Yet, the complexity of modern solutions makes it difficult for new programmers to keep up, leaving manufacturers searching for innovative ways to ensure knowledge transfer and maintain efficiency. Enter AI-powered Mastercam, an intelligent solution designed to enhance accessibility, accelerate the learning curve, and streamline workflows across the industry. Whether it's a seasoned machinist looking to enhance customer support, or a new programmer navigating complex designs, AI acts as an intelligent guide, ensuring precision, speed, and adaptability in every project. With AI-driven automation, Mastercam is redefining the future of manufacturing. Let's quickly take a look at the current build and see what it's like to work with Mastercam Co-Pilot. Mastercam Co-Pilot allows you to trigger functionality with simple text prompts. If the prompt you enter has more than one possible response, Mastercam can also prompt you with additional options. You can also use voice and ask Mastercam to set wire mode. We can also ask Mastercam to go back to shaded, please. Let's take a look at Operation 1 in Backplot. Review the motion of Operation 1. Notice that I didn't say the word backplot, but Mastercam correctly assumed that's what I wanted. Mastercam also prompted me with a button to launch Verify if that's what I wanted instead. Review the motion of Operation 3. When I'm asking Mastercam to open operations in Backplot, it's important to notice that Mastercam is actively changing the selection of toolpaths in the Toolpath Manager. I can even ask using a more natural language style of prompt, and Mastercam understands what I want. For example, the part is more beautiful in material mode. I didn't ask Mastercam to enable material mode directly, but it understood what I was requesting. I can even prompt Mastercam without asking for a specific operation or range of operations. I can say something as simple as, verify all operations. But the power of Mastercam Co-Pilot isn't just in triggering functionality in Mastercam. It's about empowering the user by making the software more discoverable through integration with the Mastercam documentation. We can ask about specific functions. What is isometric reverse? We are provided with a summary of information from the documentation, along with links to the live documentation itself. We can also ask questions about where functions are located. Where is section view located? Again, we are provided with a summary of its location and other useful information, along with a link to the topic in the documentation. This is just the beginning, and we can't wait to show you what we have in store for the future.
Hey Mastercam, open linking parameters for Operation 15. Drop the depth 5 thousandths, save, and regenerate.
And that brings us to the end of our webinar. We hope you enjoyed this exclusive look at Mastercam 2026 and found the insights from our presenters valuable.